Shopping, 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 shopping. Lots of records, haha. So I haven't done one of these in quite a while, and I figured, well, I guess it's time to actually talk to you guys about what I picked up in my vinyl collection. Every so often I'll get into this weird mood where I've got to splurge, retail therapy, and so this is what happens. So over the past couple of weekends, the weather's been nice and I've been doing a lot of my favorite record store hopping. So let's dive into some of those things that I've picked up along the way. And I'm going to move over here to give you more viewing area. And first up, we've got two albums that I picked up from Rush. We've got a Farewell to Kings as well as Hemispheres. Hemispheres was actually my first Rush album that I ever had. This really solidified my love for the Canadian progressive rock band. The Holy Trio, as some people have called it. I love this album. It's got some of my favorite movements on that. Just the title track of Hemispheres alone was enough to pick this guy up. But the mere fact that it also is followed up with Trees, one of the band's really outstanding tracks, and the instrumental piece of La Selva Stragantego. I can never pronounce it. It's the last track on this album. Just a fantastic album and one that I love to have. And I also got a Farewell to Kings. I'm not as familiar with this album, which is odd because it has one of the band's most commercial songs, which is Closer to the Heart. I never really listened to this album growing up. That's mainly because of accessibility. I just never had it. So now that I do, I'm glad to have it and to really finally dive into such songs such as Xanadu and Farewell to Kings and The Cinderella Man and just Cygnus 10-1. Great tracks from a great band, and one that I am very looking forward to diving into. Next up, you guys may or may not know, but my father got my stepmom for Christmas a kind of like a surround sound stereo, and was finally able to hook up their old turntable. And because of that, he took back a lot of his albums that he was letting me listen to. So I've had to kind of go back and purchase some of those albums that I love listening to of his. And of course, my favorite band, Genesis, I got And Then There Were Three, and A Trick of the Tail. Trick of the Tail is by far one of my favorite albums of all times. It has such classics such as Ripples, Mad Mad Moon, Robbery, Assault and Battery, Trick of the Tail. I mean, all the songs on this are 10 out of 10. This is easily a masterpiece in its own right, and one that many people agree upon. The one that I love, actually, is And Then There Were Three, the first album without Stephen Hackett. And I think this album gets overlooked because the band went in a very interesting direction on this. A lot of the songs are very dark and very melodic on this album, and not quite as accessible as, say, the follow-up of Duke. This album does have a lot of shorter songs on it, not quite as complex in terms of the arrangement of movements, but definitely complex in terms of just how much they're saying in such a short period of time. And it's a shame that this album gets overlooked so much. I love songs such as Down and Out and The Burning Rope. These songs are just standout songs on this album. So I love diving into this album, and I love revisiting it over and over again. So both of these albums, great addition to any discography. So next up, another album that I had to get because my father took back was the Yes album. This album is one of Yes's best albums. It's kind of their first really breakout album as well. Their first album of just Yes and Time and a Word, they were good, but they didn't quite really find themselves progressively, and I think this album definitely found that. And this is definitely found within Starship Trooper, Yours Is No Disgrace, Perpetual Change, and it does have the band's kind of first really breakout song of I've Seen All Good People. Anyway, I had to pick up this album because it's just a great album overall. No progressive rock collection is complete without this album. So that's it in terms of all the used albums I picked up. The rest are albums that have either been re-released or new albums. And first up, in the same vein as those Genesis and Yes albums, I had to pick up the first Led Zeppelin album as well as Zeppelin 3. These albums are fantastic, and they hold some of my favorite Zeppelin songs, some songs that have even been overlooked. I mean, Zeppelin 3 has one of my favorite songs of Since I've Been Loving You, and Zeppelin 1 has a lot of really great tracks on it, and one of my favorite tracks of Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. So I needed to have this just to kind of complete my collection, and of course I love these albums. I grew up with these albums, and it really made an impact of me while I was in my teen years, and I got those re-release ones, so it's of that 180-gram heavy vinyl, so just listening to that with that kind of a sound it creates such an enjoyable listen. Next up, from my indie side of my brain, we've got Wincing the Night Away by the Shins. And the Shins are kind of one of those introductory bands that I got into with the indie scene. I was introduced by them from Garden State in my teenage years. And so this album is... When I first picked it up, I wasn't overly that impressed. It was okay, but the more I listen to it, the more I really enjoy it. It's got some great tracks on here, such as Phantom Limbs and Sea Legs. Both of these songs are just fantastic, and it's a really pleasant listen as well. You can just put it on and just kind of enjoy the music. There's no real harshness to it. It's all just very pleasant and very accessible indie rock that I enjoy. Counter that to Porcupine Tree's second album of Up the Down Stair. I have been doing my best to try to collect all of the Porcupine Tree albums, and I think now I'm only really missing Deadwing, The Incident, and In Absentia. This is some of the really great stuff from that space era, or that trippy acid era of Steven Wilson, way back in like the early and mid 90s. So just putting this on and getting drifted away is just a real treat. A great addition, and I love just a lot of these songs. Next up is an album I've actually been hesitant to pick up just because of the price range, but when I saw that this was used, I decided, okay, I can finally pick it up. It was like $19, so I picked up Mastodon's The Hunter. A lot of people didn't really like where the band was going, especially after Crack the Sky. But I enjoy this. The more I listen to it, the more I'm getting into the groove. It's a little bit less intense, but it's also pretty brutal as well. I love the title track of The Hunter, and Black Tongue is a really gnarly track as well. And I like the fact that all the songs are on one album as well. Like, there's no two albums here, it's just one disc. And so that's what I really like, and part of the reason why I picked it up. It really draws me to an album when I see there's only one album. I don't know why, it's just a thing that I have, so I picked it up, and it's also to try to complete my Mastodon collection, so I'm glad that I picked it up, and I've been really enjoying the tunes on it as well. I'm just a little saddened that one of my favorite songs from this album isn't on it, which is The Octopus Has No Friends. That's only available on like the Super Special Edition, which is a little bit of a shame because I felt it was the best song off of this album, but still nonetheless, it's got some really great tunes on it. So next up is a little bit of an oddity for me, but if you've been following me for as long as you have, you might not be that surprised. I've got Taylor Swift's Fearless. I love Taylor Swift. I think she's a great figurehead for the pop music nowadays. I'm not a big fan of pop, but I am a big fan of Taylor Swift, so trying to complete my collection of hers. Now I'm only really missing her first full-length album, and this has some pretty great tracks as well. This is more of her country folk stuff, so it's not very popular music, but I feel like it's almost more genuine. But Taylor Swift has always been very genuine, and that's one of the main reasons why I really like her. So anyway, picked it up. It's got that premium edition, so they can charge an extra $10 with really no other cause. But again, trying to complete the collection, and it's got some really great tracks on it. Next up is an album from Record Store Day. Unfortunately, I didn't hit up Record Store Day only because I took a look at all those special releases, and I didn't really connect with any of them. So I didn't really rush the crowd, shall we say. Instead, I found this at a record store in Barrie, my hometown, and I had to pick it up. That was the soundtrack to How to Train Your Dragon. This thing is beautiful. The movie itself is a masterpiece in all respects, and a lot of that is actually due in part to the atmosphere being set down from the soundtrack. This thing is just, I'm speechless listening to it. It's a perfect blend of that like Celtic folk approach to a soundtrack and score. So it's almost like a river dance at times, but it also has some pretty dark things on it as well. So I love this soundtrack. I put it on all the time, and now that I have it in vinyl, it is just a great treat. So finishing this all up, it's not a vinyl. This guy is a special edition. This is Ayreon's The Theater Equation. I love the Human Equation. It is probably my favorite album from Ayreon, and when I found out they were putting this to a stage show, I had to run out and pick it up. So I special ordered this guy as like the super special edition. It comes with, you know, it's got the Blu-ray and 2 DVDs as well as a full book. I'm going to open it up a little bit so you guys can see. So it's got that full theater booklet almost feel to it as well, which, you know, as a theater buff, I really appreciated. So they've got where each character is playing their own voice, because this piece of work is, in a nutshell, a guy goes into a coma and he's visited by all of his different emotions personified. When I was listening to this album, I'm thinking, how on earth are they ever going to put this to stage? But they finally did. They've roped in a lot of the, you know, main cast, and those that they didn't, they got some great talent. And of course, there's the 2 CDs at the end. and it's also signed by the mastermind behind the whole thing of Arjun right there. So I haven't had a chance to actually sit down and watch this because life, but I've set aside some time for my vacation that is coming up. That will be coming up actually this Friday, which is part of the reason I haven't been able to do a whole lot of videos lately. This next week, I'm not going to upload any videos, unfortunately, but I've loaded up my iPod, my phone, and my computer up with new music to review and really get into the groove. So along with listening and watching this guy in my vacation, I plan to just seclude myself and really get into a lot of those new albums so that when I come back, I've got a lot of music to talk about, and I'm really looking forward to that. So that's about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. What was your favorite album that I presented? Let me know by commenting below. And of course, you guys are always the best, and I can't wait to talk to you guys after my vacation of some of those albums that I've been listening to. So until then, notes out.